Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Petitions and Representations Board. Members and officers, please remember to switch microphones on and speak directly into the microphone and switch off again after speaking. The meeting this evening will be live streamed to the public and a recording of the meeting will be available on the Council's website within 24 hours of the meeting. Switch off mobile phones or put on silent mode. If you need to use your mobile during the meeting, please leave the chamber and return when finished. So we'll start with apologies for absence.
None, Chair.
Thank you. And then we'll move on to the minutes of the last meeting. Have they all been read?
Yes.
And agreed? Agreed. Do we have any section 106 notices?
Again, none, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any disclosures of interest? No. Any urgent business? We haven't had any actually. Thank you. So we'll go on to the reports. So we are going to hand over to Mark, I think, for the petition for the reduction of the speed limit on Barton Road in Luton.
Thank you, Chair. This is an update following the last couple of meetings. Obviously, the petition was submitted some time ago with regards to lowering the speed limit on Barton Road from 40 to 30 miles per hour. A discussion was had at the Petitions Board before last surrounding this and the accident data as well as speed survey data. It was agreed that we'd undertake a speed survey. Unfortunately, at the last Petitions Board meeting, the speed survey hadn't been conducted owing to some equipment issues we were having in highways. Happy to report the equipment issues are now being resolved. We've managed to undertake the speed surveys as promised. We've put up 2 speed devices. They're carried out on the 8th, between the 8th of August and the 17th of August, one facing the northbound direction on lamp column 8 and one facing the southbound direction on lamp column 5. The northbound survey found the 85th percentile speed, which, just to remind everyone, is a speed at which 85% of the traffic is travelling at or below, to be 34.9 miles per hour, with the southbound at 34.7. The only thing I will state is if the data needs to be reviewed by anyone, there was a slight issue with a power cut after the data had been taken down, so the dates on the data set have been reset back to 1970. The data is still accurate, it's still relevant. It just means the dates of when it was put up are showing as, I think it's 1st of January till the 10th of January 1970. Obviously, that's not the case. The survey data basically demonstrates that the majority of road users were driving significantly under the 40 mile per hour speed limit. 85% of them were driving under 35, in fact. Therefore, it's felt to be that the 40 mile per hour speed limit is having sort of little to no relation to the collision data that's being presented. This backs up the data that was presented at the previous meeting a couple of times ago, where the majority of collisions that were demonstrated there, I think it was only 3 that were found to be as a result of excess speed. So at this time, it's proposed that we continue to monitor the site, keep the speed limit as is at 40, with a recommendation to monitor it and carry on as it is, and we'll see what happens. If it needs further intervention down the line because there's a collision issue that's identified as a result of speeding, we'll address it.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any questions from members? Francis?
Sorry, when you say monitor it, how often is that?
So we review, we get speed data, collision data pretty much every quarter. We always review that, and it's, obviously I review the annual programme for regards to local safety schemes, safety around school, speed reduction measures annually as well. So as part of that programme, I carry out a review of the town and find out if there's any collision hotspots, and if there are, look into why they're occurring and that sort of thing. So it's, I would say, sort of quarterly to annually, pretty much.
Questions from members first. Any other? Yep, Nigel.
No, I just think I'm delighted the survey's been carried out. Going back to 1970? That's a bit of a glitch. On your report?
No, again, it's not the survey's gone back to 1970. It's just purely, I don't know why, but the equipment manufacturers, when the battery is disconnected from the survey equipment, it resets the survey equipment back to a factory year of 1970. I couldn't tell you why that is. It's obviously just a glitch within the system. I've seen it before. I try to keep the batteries plugged in. Unfortunately, sometimes the batteries go dead before we have a chance to download the data, or if they're disconnected in the process of taking down from the lighting column, it can cause this glitch. Like I say, it doesn't affect the data in any way, shape or form. It just misplaces the date, basically.
Oh, I remember 1970, so yeah, I would imagine what the speed limit was like. I mean, I use that road frequently, every day, actually, and I'm pleased that, you know, the level of abuse of the speed limit doesn't seem to be appearing in terms of your data on your report, but I know it to be at times a hotspot. As Francis mentioned, in terms of reviewing it, would you set a time when this particular area is going to be reviewed again, or is it just part of an ongoing review that we have across the borough?
It's normally part of an ongoing review. If there are requests put in by members of the public or by councillors, then it's something we can prioritise. To put it in perspective, I've got a backlog at the minute. I think there's 102 roads due to be surveyed within Luton at the minute as requests of councillors and members of the public and the police. I think we've done about 30 or 40 of them. We only carry out the speed surveys during term time. We only have 8 pieces of survey equipment and obviously limited resources to put them up. So it does take some time to get around. So it's not something I'd be willing to commit to doing annually or even quarterly, just because of the sheer, volume that we've got to do around the town.
I get that, thank you.
Councillor Isles?
Sorry, can I just ask, I know the speed devices were installed between August and in August, but as the nights are drawing in, obviously, would it be possible to do another survey during these winter months? Because obviously, when it's darker, things kind of change a bit.
I mean, arguably, there's not really a lot of data to support that. I mean, some people say that when the sun's dry and everyone's nicer, people tend to drive a little bit quicker because they're less worried about slipping on the rain. People are generally in a better mood when the sun's out and perhaps are less conscious of what they're doing. So there's multiple factors. I don't think the time of year really factors into it. If anything, we could potentially see a slowdown in the speeds as well, based on the weather conditions, foggy nights drawing in, heavy rainfall, even into snow and ice. I don't really think the time of year is too relevant. I think it's important to try and avoid putting them inside school holidays when traffic flows are lower, and that's why we try to do that. So it's not something I'll consider doing or have considered doing. If it's something that you want to see as part of this, we can look at arranging it, but I don't feel it's necessary at this stage.
I agree, I don't think that's necessary, and I know there's a very long list of roads that you need to test out as well, isn't there? So putting this on again probably wouldn't be the most appropriate use of the equipment. Any other members have any questions? Councillor Steer?
Yeah, just very quickly. So there's like a backlog of 100. I understand the issue about not doing the surveys in school holidays, but I would have thought with that amount of backlog, so you've had the whole for summer holidays where you haven't done any. Surely it would give you enough data to say perhaps we should revisit that when the schools are back.
It's certainly something we can do. Like I said, the reasons we don't do it is purely down to the amount of traffic and the traffic volumes being low. I like to try and give a more sort of representative figure of what's going on. I mean, obviously schools are in session 48 weeks of the year, or 42 weeks of the year rather, so it's not a massive period, although it's over the summer holidays. I appreciate it's a 6-week gap, but overall it's not too much data we're seeing, I don't think. And I mean, we all see it when you're travelling to work in the morning when the schools are out. You can get to work in 10 minutes as opposed to sort of, what could be half an hour. So I think it does really bear representation and consideration when we're carrying out these things, which is why the decision was made not to do them in the school holidays.
Is that all the questions? Yeah. I'll let the lead petitioner speak.
I just want to talk about several points in the recommendation part of the report. Number 7, it said that the council's database has recorded accidents, but they've got no data for this current year. The Residents' Association are waiting for data from Bedfordshire Police. However, I've got a resident who reports to me things he sees along the road on his cycle journeys. There was a non-illuminated sign on a Central Island crossing outside a house in Barton Road, which points there's danger if pedestrians are there, with traffic speeding at going at 40. The guardrails at the pedestrian crossing by another residence, 86 Barton Road, they were knocked into. The issue was raised in March, and it was also raised in July. And at the end of July, it was finally put right. Children and parents cross there daily to go to Warden Hill infant and junior schools, so that was an additional risk, not having the barriers up properly. A sign was knocked to the floor on the traffic island where Cardinal Newman students cross. This has now been repaired. And today, as I drove in here, I saw, I don't know what you call it, but where the arrows are on the roundabout, somebody has gone into that because it's all at an angle. So that's some of the accidents. And then I had this report sent to me by email A pedestrian appeared to have been struck by a car and required medical attention from ambulance crew. Drivers often seem to have difficulty in adjusting their speed when negotiating the roundabouts. Slowing down from the current 40 miles an hour to 30 miles per hour puts pedestrians at risk at this point. I have already highlighted to Luton Borough Council, in my view, Barton Road should be 30 miles an hour from Turnpike Roundabout all the way to the town centre. The council need to recognise it's no good having 40 miles an hour limit on Barton Road, especially where side roads leading to schools and colleges have 30 or 20 miles an hour. In reality, it's more likely that if motorists were to comply with a 30 mile per hour limit, they should be able to adjust more easily down to 20 mile on the roads that feed into the roundabouts. There are large numbers of children who use the road. Without the Barnfield College students, there are over 2,500 pupils who cross along that stretch of road that we're talking about where these accidents have taken place. So that's number 7. I'm just having a look, yes. And it's not just speeding drivers that want to pass through, it's not just speeding, the drivers want to pass through the roundabouts as quickly as they can. And reports on the roundabout show that 40 is too fast when you've got 20 and 30. And I went way back into government recommendations, I suppose, 2011, where several roads with different speed limits enter a roundabout. The roundabout should be restricted at the same level as the majority of the approach roads. If there is an equal division, for example, where a 30-mile-an-hour road crosses one with 40, the roundabout itself should take the lower limit. So that was guidance that the government setting local speed limits in 2012. I couldn't find anything more relevant. Of the 11 accidents I was aware of when I first put in the petition, 3 of those were at roundabouts and 7 of those were at junctions. And I think as a council you need to consider when they build the new housing in Enterprise Way, there'll be 119 new dwellings and more pedestrians and cars will be at this point. I know we've talked about in the past speed cameras, which I still think are the effective solution. However, at roundabouts and junctions, could we not improve sort of road markings, lines to slow traffic down, such measures as this, as well as the long-term speeding effects that we're looking at? So I also know that at the local residents meeting last week, some Turnpike residents raised issues of difficulties crossing the A6 with the speed of traffic, where they're trying to cross the road at those points and they don't feel safe. Then I go on to number 18. Barton Road is very wide, very straight road. If the speed limit were reduced to 30 miles an hour, measures would need to be installed to keep the speed limit self-enforcing. All of Barton Road, all of the A6 is wide and straight. Therefore, I don't see why, with the same conditions along that road, one part of the road has got one speed limit and the other part of the road has got a higher speed limit that we're talking about. In point 17, it said that the 30 miles an hour part of the A6, they didn't exceed the speed limit, the NO2 council's objectives, but they're saying that if they suggest in the report that if the speed limit at the other end of Barton Road goes to 30 miles an hour, then the emissions will increase. So I don't see the correlation in those 2 points. I just wanted to raise that. And then the other thing, talking about increasing traffic and so on, the M1 to A6 link has been approved north of Turnpike Drive along the A6. It would be good if Luton Borough Council could work with, I call it mid-bed, but it's central beds, because their speed limit is 50. Theirs would need to be reduced to 40 along the A6. and that reinforces 40 to 30 by turnpike. Then I looked at number 19, the cost of installing and designing measures for the road layout would cost hundreds of thousands. I looked online, and that's the only way I can get my information, but Bedfordshire Borough in summer of 21 stated the cost of installing 2 speed cameras was 85,000, ongoing costs of £5,000 a year. Therefore, I don't get where we get this figure of hundreds of thousands of pounds to reduce the speed limit. And also, we'll look at, I'm just having a look here. No, we'll go on to that in a minute. So, the other criteria I wanted to talk about was, what are Luton's criteria for speed cameras? What is the criteria for getting speed cameras put up as a council?
Yeah, currently we don't have a forward policy. It's actually one that's been worked on at the minute. We're working on a speed management policy within the town. I'm hoping to have that drafted by December and before exec in January time. So at the minute there isn't a clear policy. I don't know. Unfortunately, it sort of predates me when the last speed camera was put in, so I don't know what the criteria is assessed or how it was put in. I'm happy to go away and have a discussion with the team and see if we can get some more information around that. But at the minute, it's knowledge that we do have an issue with in Luton with regards to speed management, and it's looking to be addressed.
Councillor Taylor?
It's not necessarily speed cameras per se, but it's the fact that you've got the mobile cameras as well. Sometimes, less frequently now on the ring road, is it possible that they can police want to do a speed check and then confirm the data?
So Beds Police, and we're going back a few years when I had some involvement with them, their speed sites were based on complaints and collision data. I assume it's probably somewhat similar now. The other thing to bear in mind as well is with regards to particularly speed enforcement is obviously the council is responsible for the installation of the cameras and the maintenance of them. The enforcement side of it does fall within the police. They are assigned, for argument's sake, 20 slots per month in relation to speed offences for the whole of the borough, and that's just not just Luton, that's Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire and Cambridgeshire as well. So they have a struggle to try and prioritise how they're going to manage their speed enforcement side of it. So what I'm basically saying is we could look at putting cameras in, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the enforcement rate is going to go up for that area, because the police will inevitably concentrate on the areas where they've got high sort of enforcement issues that are also correlating with accident issues or collision rates. So speed cameras aren't necessarily the quick fix that everybody would like them to be. They can serve as a deterrent, and I'm not disputing that. Obviously, people will inevitably try and slow down for a speed camera at the fear of getting caught, but the real world results of people getting forced are sort of less likely to happen, unfortunately, particularly in areas where, if we were to look at average speed camera, which is where the quotation with regards to the hundreds of thousands came from, we've got 2 average speed camera schemes in Luton, one on New Airport Way and one on Dunstable Road. Both of those cost in excess of £250,000 to put in every year, and the maintenance costs for them annually are £20,000. So that's where part of that figure came from for the Barton Road job. So that's just another cost that we've got to bear in mind as well if we go down this road.
Can I just follow on that, your Chair? Going back in my time when I had a portfolio, we used to get requests from the police and meet with the police to discuss various roads where there is a problem. Have the police raised any concerns about Barton Road, this particular road, as being a problem area for speeding?
No, I can confirm. I still speak with the police quite regularly, speak to the traffic enforcement unit. We work closely with them in regards to collisions and hotspots. They raise their attention. This isn't one that's been raised by them as an area of concern, unlike other areas of the town.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Was there anything else you wanted to go back on?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. I do know that when the local police meeting, when they ask residents what they want to be their priorities, speeding was an area priority for around Warden Hill with the police. I'm going on now to point 21, where you talked about the 2 speed devices. They were in place for 10 days during the school holidays, where traffic wasn't as heavy as it normally is. Could you explain to me what location they were, because I didn't know what LC8 and LC5 meant?
Apologies, yes, that's lighting column 5 and lighting column 8, so they're strapped to lighting columns.
Can you tell me the location of those?
They'll be between Turnpike Drive and the bottom end where Ridley Lane is. I can't tell you exactly where along the road they are. I can probably get your plan if required. That's not going to be a problem.
Thank you. So we heard that the 85% profile was, or percentage was 34.9 and 34.7, which are both above the speed limit that we would like to see enforced in that area. What was the mean speed during that traffic survey?
I'm afraid I didn't look at the mean speed. It's not something we use in highway design. Best practice and guidance recommends that we use an 85th percentile speed when carrying out carriageway design, particularly with a mind to speed limits and installation of traffic calming measures.
I'm going to go back to that.
Sorry, just to interrupt. I've just been told that I shouldn't be allowing so many questions, and I think there was a time limit on the comments. So I think I'm going to end that here, if that's okay. Okay, yeah.
We still feel that 30 miles an hour should be the speed limit, and this is an email I got off another resident that I'll just end with. And it's regarding safety and the speed. Because the road is wider, with few private entrances and driveways, and the link to the fast-moving A6 beyond Keach, drivers will always attempt to drive faster on the stretch 40 miles an hour. I see it every day. The road is conducive to speeding. I'm afraid the only way to solve this, by way of expensive option, is installing speed cameras. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mark, is there anything you wanted to clarify, or is that all okay?
No, I mean, like I said, I empathise with people's points. I appreciate speeding is a contentious issue, and I'm not disputing that there are speeding vehicles that occur down the road, but we have to, when we're considering schemes and how we're going to justify public expending money, we have to justify on the facts and figures at the minute. There's not a large accident issue that is collated to speeding as a result of, and the vehicles that are travelling down there aren't found to be travelling within excess of the current speed limit.
Thank you, Mark. So I think we've heard quite a few things today, and we can see the data quite clearly on what's going on. There are two proposals, and the recommendation set out in paragraph 2 is to continue to monitor the collision rate of the site, as with other areas of the town, and prioritise intervention within the scope of the works programme, which is reviewed annually. Shall we make a vote on whether we agree with this proposal or disagree? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. And I think I sympathise, and I lived over there for a number of years now, and it was difficult to cross the road, but there were plenty of crossing points, and it should have been aware. I mean, where I live now, just off Park Street, that's meant to be a 20-mile-an-hour zone, but there are no physical infrastructure to stop vehicles speeding, and some of them do bomb down there 50, 60 mile an hour because Park Street is a nice wide straight road, but it's something that you've got to live with. It depends on the data, but I think we've seen in the report it doesn't support reduction. The cost of physical infrastructure needed to reduce the speed doesn't justify the cost when there's no real evidence to suggest that it ought to be implemented as 30-mile-an-hour zone. So reluctantly, I would if you're going to move the resolution, I'll second that, Chair.
So do other members agree? So, show of hands, yeah? Or question, Councillor Stiff?
Actually, sorry. Just about the road markings on the roundabout approaches. I don't know what they are at the moment, but the sort of rumble road markings, would that help, or and fairly inexpensive?
There's a couple of issues with rumble road markings. I mean, they will alert drivers that they're approaching an area where they should be paying attention to their speed and perhaps more conscious of what's happening around them, but I would argue that they should be doing that on the approach to roundabout without the need of rumble strips doing that. It is noted as well, the approach to the large roundabout on Ridley Lane, the speed limit is reduced to 30 miles per hour ahead of that, and there are anti-skid surface materials on the approach to the Grassmere roundabout, and the same one, I think, on the Turnpike Drive roundabout from memory. I don't really think lining is the appropriate solution to this. Equally, it's quite expensive to maintain. The thing with putting linings, particularly on roundabouts, is they require road closures. This means inconvenience to the public for probably 1 or 2 days. And the maintenance, in reality, for markings on high areas where wheels are always turning on them and wearing them out quicker than they would be on straights, you're probably looking to replace them every couple of years, and I'd expect it to become quite prohibitively expensive quite quickly. The roundabouts themselves are quite small, round Turnpike Drive and Grasmere, where it's quite obvious where you should be positioning yourself on the roundabout without the aid of markings. There's perhaps an argument to had on Ridley Lane where it's quite a wide marking and it can lead to some delineation about where people should be approaching on the roundabout, entering it and then leaving it. But I don't think it's necessary. There's not a lot of accident data to suggest that people are regularly having side swipes or confusion about which lane they should be in when they're exiting and having collisions as a result of it at this stage.
Councillor Taylor?
I just think it odd that if you're a driver and you can't see a roundabout ahead, then you shouldn't really be on the road. That is, unless you're texting or on your phone, which I see as a pedestrian many, many times. And if the police clamp down on people using the mobile phone, maybe the roads would then be a bit safer.
Mark, go back on that.
Sorry, there was just one additional point I meant to mention as well, is that obviously with the introduction of things like rumble strips, they are quite noisy, and it's okay during the day, but at night time, particularly sort of the early hours of the morning, 2, 3 o'clock, if you put them up to a built-up residential area, you'll quickly find that residents are hearing that brrr all night long, and it starts to irritate them quite quickly.
Councillor Marshall?
Yeah, just one final point which may be of assistance. I've been involved quite heavily with the local Speedwatch campaign around Luton. It's a team of volunteers who will come out on request, and we've run it recently up in Stopsley, and being a resident over in Birmingham, we have an issue on the road up to Sainsbury's. They are a team of local volunteers, but it may well be worth reaching out to them to see if there could be of some assistance at all, just to raise a little bit of profile in the local area. Might help.
I think that's a good suggestion. Thank you. So I'm going to move the recommendations out in paragraph 2.
Yeah, seconded.
Seconded. Can we have a show of hands on those who agree with the recommendation? Agreed. Thank you. That's the end. That's the final item on the agenda. Thank you all for coming.
You had me worried, I thought it was something else.